Hey Reddit, it's HG Johnny here with another instructional how to use video. This time we're going to be talking about the Monk Gearbox 2.0. I released the first version of the Gearbox probably a week or so ago. It was dedicated basically to the set builders. At that time we had a lot of folks coming up with some really great sets for not too much money, so I thought I'd make a tool that would help them keep track of how much they were getting and what those items were yielding them. It's kind of transitioned now. Earlier, it was the first revision was based more on EHP because that's basically what I start with. You have to have a firm defense before you can go in the offense. But now I added the DPS variant to the sheet as well, and with that comes the ability to have dual wield or single wield. If you're running a two-handed type setup like a Scorn Tempest Rush or whatever, and you can also have a sword and board type setup here. Thanks to Slack for that. He brought that to my attention that we really didn't have any kind of tool that helped those guys out. So hopefully this accomplishes that at least to some extent. So shout out to Slack there. Alright, so we're just going to approach this as if you had never seen it before, and I'll just give you the down and dirty, kind of touching some highlights, and go from there. Alright, so the first thing you'll see if you just go from left to right, top to bottom here, your Paragon level, right? When you're building a set, you have to take your Paragon level into consideration, especially if you're going to be giving it away. So, enter in whatever Paragon level you are, and it will automatically adjust the base values to be commensurate with your Paragon level, which is good, pretty self-explanatory. Up here, as before, we have target values. When I build a set, I have specific goals in mind, and I set those goals across the top up here. So in this case, they're in shaded light blue. And as I build this, as I populate everything on the gear sheet down here, which we'll cover about later, and all these numbers start filling in, and all this calculated information starts coming to fruition here, I can kind of see how I'm going to end up. Right now, all these things up here are conditionally linked to the calculated variance, basically. So as you can see in this case, my total reduction is 89.95. Well, I wanted it to be 91. So that conditional link says, hey, what I wanted is less than, or what I have is less than what I wanted. So I'm going to shade this red as a visual clue to, hey, you didn't quite meet your goal. So that's kind of what I use it for. Just a heads up to me, hey, I might need to work on something, maybe readjust some armor or some resist or what have you to try to get that back up. So that's kind of the conditional formatting associated with that. Alright, as we keep going around here, like I mentioned earlier, we have the ability now to toggle between dual wield, single wield, and sword and board. I guess that's kind of a misnomer. It's basically dual wield yes or dual wield no. No, of course, would be if you were doing a two-handed setup or the sword and board. So and every cell that has one of these why no's, I try to put a little verbiage as to what it's doing when you toggle it. So in this case, if it's yes, it utilizes data associated with both weapons. No, it utilizes the data associated with only your main hand. So not just this won't just affect the data from the weapon itself, it'll also affect all this stuff over here. So I have it set up a lot of if statements throughout the formulas in here. So basically, hey, if T6 equal yes, do this. If not, do that kind of thing. So that's how I control the inputs depending on whether you're dual wielding or not dual wielding. And I'll show you that in a little bit here. Okay, so right now, another new thing I'd probably want to show you. Well, let me start here. Keep going around the circle. Left over from last time are your STI and one with everything toggles, right? If you're an all-res monk, you don't need OEE in the equation, so you can turn that off. Most of us still run with STI, so we should turn that on. This setup I have right now, right here, is my attempt at trying to pass this weekly challenge over in the Diablo sub. So I'm just kind of experimenting. So I use this stuff. I don't just make it for you guys. I use it and tune it and try to make it worthwhile. So okay, we'll go down the list here. Cost of your gems, right? You just kind of no drop downs associated with that, but you just pop in the values. Here we have your section for the weapons gems. Right now we have the ability to throw in a ruby or throw in an emerald. So I'll talk about that real quick. So right now you can see in my main hand I'm dual wielding, and I have a 160 min-max value ruby in there. Okay. one thing I want to note about rubies and weapons. The 160, will always be min-max. You always add this. But you can amp that up a little bit if you happen to have a weapon that has a high bonus damage value, because this, in this case 48%, also factors in. So really I'm getting, it's 160, if I was to do the math, it's 160 times 1.48, which turns out to be, I think it's like 253, I don't remember the exact math, but instead of now applying just 160 to my min-max, I apply 253, so that's pretty huge. I think I had known that at once upon a time or forgot it or whatever, but as I was going through and working this video, it came back to me, so I just wanted to point it out to you guys. This is like it was before, right? It's like how many gems you have, what the value is, and it auto-populates everything. Here's a new kind of a drop-down list for your vitality gem. Now, any of these drop-down lists that you see, shoot on down to this section down here, which is kind of like the hidden math and any other kind of reference data I need, and that's where the list, I pull the list values from. Right, here's the percentage for the vitality rubies. Here's for the dexterity gems. Right, here's for the actual ruby value itself. So all that stuff. As you can see, the dual wield math is down here. Your scram, your single wield math is down here. As are your average damage, main hand bonus, and the HP with block, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Alright, so that's kind of the gist of the dashboard. So as before, the heart of this is really back here on the gear page. Basically, you have all your components, right? Chest all the way down to shield in this case. I list these as I buy them in the auction house. Unfortunately, these don't match as they're listed on D3 Up, so as you guys go through here and populate this yourselves, you're going to have to do a little bouncing back and forth. Sorry for that, but like I said, when I first made this, it was kind of to help the set builders, and I gave them my recommendations as to how I kind of prioritize, and this is just a remnant of that. Alright, so down here, some of the new stuff. Right now, as I mentioned earlier, we have main hand, offhand, and this information you're going to pull right off the weapon. Okay, you have to fill this stuff in its entirety, or things just won't turn out right. So keep that in mind. Speaking of not turning out right, the possibilities list, your min and max damage. Now in the toolbox, I have a section in the min and max average damage where you can enter a hidden min. Well, I didn't put that in this because it just complicates things a little bit and takes up more space. But the basic gist is that if you have a piece of jewelry that has a hidden min on it, let's just say, example, I have a hidden min of 30, but my normal min-max range of the jewelry is 20 to 40. Okay, now you'd expect the average value to be 30. Well, if I have a min of 20 and a hidden min of 30, you add those two together, and if that number is higher than your listed max, that number then becomes your average. So if you put all your stuff in here and it's not quite working out for you, take a look and see if maybe you missed some of the some of the hidden min affixes that are sometime on jewelry. I just wanted to point that out so I didn't forget it. Alright, let's bounce back to the dashboard here. Okay, so right now, as I said earlier, we're in a dual wield setup, but you can see over here that I have a section for shield, and on the back I have my shield stuff already entered in here. So kind of the beauty behind this whole dual wield yes or no is that a lot of these values, I turn off the inputs based on the position of this toggle switch. So for example, I'm in dual wield. If I come over here to shield, you can see basically it's a condition. If T6 is Y, then 0. But if it's not Y, so if I go to N, which means I'm not in dual wield, in which case I can use my shield, it pulls the data from the gear sheet cell E79. So all the shield inputs are like that, and the on-hand weapons like that too, except the on-hand will be referenced to no. So basically if I go to no, all this stuff here that's on my on-hand currently will go away, and my shield data will populate. Cha-ching! I love when a plan comes together. Alright, so that's how that works. Pretty self-explanatory. So if you want to set up a Tempest Rush set, using a big two-handed scorn, you would be in no. If you wanted to set up a sword and board kind of thing, you would be in dual wield no. Now it doesn't do anything to the data back here. That's still preserved, but it's just not allowing the data to be passed through to the dashboard and over to the calculated section. So that's kind of how it all works. Alright, so let's see here. I mentioned earlier, we got this sword and board kind of thing down here, and part of that was trying to figure out how to calculate overall EHP with block. I've never used a sword and board, so I basically had to get a hold of Aaron over at D3Up and ask him, hey man, how in the world are you calculating this? And there's a whole bunch of math behind it, a whole bunch of code that he sent me, but it basically boils down to this. Alright, so a lot of sites to give you the EHP with block are using an average incoming hit of 70,000. And I think this is left over from back in the day when Inferno Act 2 was probably one of the hardest acts in the game, and some of the monsters in there hit like ferociously. So they kind of base it off of the 70,000 hits. So basically what happens is I got an incoming hit for 70,000 damage. Okay, my armor and resist mitigation takes over and whittles that down to 5,000. Then my block percent whittles that down another 1,200, so I'm left with 4268. That's how much damage I'm feeling from that 70,000 damage hit coming in. So now when that happens, you take this number here, multiply it by the number of percentage points you have for block, so in my case 22. So this number times 22 equals 93,900, and that number is added to your calculated EHP up here, and you end up with this. I personally don't put a lot of stock in this. I like to go with the stuff that always is. Block is not always happening, just as EHP you get from reduction to melee, reduction to range. That isn't all the time stuff. So when I build a set or when I evaluate someone, I look at this value right here. I don't care about how it could be. I want to know what the worst case scenario is. So, and that's what this represents. All right, fellas. Boy, I think I covered everything here. Like I said, all how to, the math and stuff is contained down here. I'll have these cells hidden, but if you need to try to reverse engineer something or what have you, they're down there. And I think that's about it. So I'm going to leave it at that. And if you guys have any questions, just please post in the forums, and we'll try to get and take care of. All right, guys. Have a good one.